Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to discuss the surprising news, surprised me, that Ian Blackford of the SNP wants, for the second time, to help Boris Johnson solidify his position in Downing Street, in this case by supporting him with a confidence motion. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So a little warning, it's not already obvious. Some of you aren't going to like this. A lot of viewers here obviously are party political. I'm party political. You know, I'm a supporter, long-time supporter of the Labour Party. But the thing is, if you take the Conservatives aside for one moment, I criticise the Labour Party more than any other party because you need to face up to when your party is doing something wrong. If you can do that, you're a supporter. If you can't do that, probably a cultist. Put it this way, I'm not going to be entirely glowing in my praise of the SNP here. This is quite a stunningly stupid move. But the SNP, I think they're out of line here. Ian Blackford has announced that he's going to bring a vote of no confidence before the House this week. He's going to present his motion. He is claiming that he's going to be the real opposition with this action. This is the best thing that has happened to Boris Johnson for months. He's pissing himself laughing right now. But how can a vote of no confidence against Boris Johnson help him? Easy. Let's explain the process. This is how it's going to work out. So Ian Blackford is going to present his motion to Parliament. I don't know when it is, today, tomorrow, whenever. You know, I'm assuming it will be taken seriously by the Speaker, like it's automatically granted. If the Leader of the Opposition, if Keir Starmer was to stand up and ask for it, that it's automatic. Ian Blackford, I'm going to assume because the opposition parties will have to support it. Of course they will. I'm still going to assume it will be allowed by the Speaker. So assuming it is allowed, the debate and the vote will probably be set for later this week. They don't tend to hang about with these things. That debate, this is how the debate works, right? The House of Commons debating chamber's packed, right? It will consist of Conservative MPs standing up and saying how great Boris Johnson's leadership is, and opposition MPs standing up saying what a disaster he has been. There will be cheering and jeering, a right sideshow waste of time. At the end of it, every single Conservative MP will vote in favour of Boris Johnson. That includes the Conservative MPs who have already written letters expressing their lack of confidence in his leadership to their own committee. Every woman, man and man-child amongst them will support Johnson. At a time when Conservative MPs are talking openly about Johnson's time coming to an end, openly, Blackford will have united them all behind him, because they won't be able to do that now. Any briefings against the Prime Minister will be seen as disloyal. They'll have to be very, very off the record. See, Conservatives don't mind assassinating their leaders. They're utterly ruthless. Oh, they'll do that at the drop of a hat. But it's a very bad look for them to help the opposition to do so. It's all in-house. It's got to be done themselves. No outsiders. This motion will not do any damage to Johnson within his party or even in the eyes of the public. In fact, as a rare victory, it might actually give him a boost. It will certainly relieve the pressure and Johnson will think it's his birthday because what does he happen? He get everything he wants. This man, remember, doesn't want to govern. It's not just that he's governing badly. He doesn't want to govern. He just wants people to say how great he is. That's all. He just wants people to say how brilliant he is. What is this motion? He gets to sit down and listen to a load of his own MPs kissing his arse for hours. He'll be in rapture. The media will also report some of the things they say. Imagine that. People reading, oh, I didn't know he did this brilliant thing. Yeah, it's because he didn't, but they'll say it anyway. So it potentially increases his standing in the public as well. Little bounce back in the polls, maybe. If you are opposed to Boris Johnson, this is a counterproductive thing to do. The only people who can get rid of Boris Johnson before an election are Conservative MPs, and this is bringing them in line with his leadership. If you wanted rid of Johnson, this is the last thing you would do. If you want rid of Johnson, you just keep heaping pressure on the Conservatives, who would then heap pressure on Johnson. The conclusion, therefore, has to be they do not want to get rid of Boris Johnson. Now, don't get me wrong, politics is cynical. I'm not one of these people who say, oh, politicians should be truthful. I support this politician because they always tell the truth, even though very few do. No, politics is cynical, and sometimes playing the political game means supporting what you oppose. You know, for example, consider this line of thinking. Boris Johnson is a disaster. He's such a disaster that there is a good chance that if he leads the Conservatives into the next general election, the Tories will lose. In fact, I've often wondered if Keir Starmer has been of the same mind. You know, bear in mind when some other opposition leaders were sort of wanting to tackle Boris Johnson's lies in Parliament, Starmer stayed away from that. It's almost like, I don't mind Boris Johnson being in charge. I'll keep him there. So Labour, you could argue, have played the same cynical game. If this were all part of a strategy to keep Johnson in place for that next election, cynical as this move would be, I wouldn't be saying that this is a stupid move. I'd be saying this is a cynical move, but this is why they're doing it. And it totally makes sense. In theory, it can do the SNP a lot of good. Like Boris Johnson is the most effective champion of an independent Scotland since Robert the Bruce. He also helps the SNP electorally, you know, both in Holyrood and Westminster. Potentially another leader might be just as callous but a lot smarter. They might even appear more moderate and therefore dial down the urgency to break away from the UK. Who knows? And I would get that line of thinking. If that's the line of thinking and this would help achieve that, absolutely. But there's a huge flaw in it, if that is indeed the thinking. If Boris Johnson looks like being an electoral millstone around the necks of Conservatives, they will drop him. They're not going to stick by him just because of this motion. It'll just give him more time. You know, with or without this motion, he will be made to walk the plank if Tory MPs think he's going to lose them their seats. If the polls continue to go badly, especially if the by-elections this month go badly, which I'm going to be talking about tomorrow because there's one this week, he will be removed. But this motion runs the risk of extending his time in office because those Conservative MPs, for a time, are going to have to get behind him. At a time when they are talking openly against him, this is going to change that now. The bottom line is, if he rides out the current wave of scandals, he will remain in place to lead them to the next election. And that will be an election win because, like I said, if it doesn't look like they're going to win it for him, they will drop him. So by definition, if he's still in charge, it's because Tory MPs think that at the very least he's the best placed to lead them to victory. Now, if that happens, and if he does win that next election, this motion buying him more time will bear some responsibility for that. And if he doesn't ride out these scandals, he will go regardless. Nothing to do with this motion. Someone else will succeed him and they will have a clean slate with the public. There will be an immediate bounce back in the polls and the new leader will instantly take credit for everything that they can sell as a victory and blame anything perceived to be bad on the outgoing Boris Johnson. Just like Johnson did with May and Cameron. They dump all the ills of their government on their predecessor. It's how they work. And it works as well. It's important that Johnson goes as soon as possible to increase the amount of time that the opposition have to work on his successor and highlight their problems to the public. The only impact this motion can have is to reduce the amount of time we have to do that. It also, as a side issue, because there's a by-election this week, runs the risk of energising Conservative voters around the country. Oh, how dare they pick on our Boris? Because you know how it is, sometimes you're having a bit of an argument with friends or family or something like that, and then an outsider comes and have a pop at them. It's like, hang on a minute, that's my pal, that's my bro. What are you doing picking on them? You know, so you can actually energise support for Boris Johnson in the by-election this week. Possibly getting them out to vote where they might not have done this Thursday. Potentially knackering what would be a huge banana skin for Boris Johnson. Like, my best hope is that this motion does nothing at all. That's my best hope. Because it doesn't even have a theoretical chance of doing any good. Like, in theory, what good could it actually do anyone? So then you have to think, so why are the SNP doing it? It's possible that they've made a strategic error. That is possible. This is not unlike when they supported Boris Johnson's motion for the general election that gave him his huge majority and facilitated our exit from the EU in 2019. If the SNP hadn't supported Johnson's motion, that election would never have taken place. We would have had the second referendum by now. Brexit would have been kicked in the knackers once and for all. Don't get me wrong, the Lib Dems and Labour ultimately were also responsible. All three parties facilitated this travesty. At the time, I suppose the SNP thinking was that, well, with the general election, we'll win more seats in Westminster, which they did, and it will help shore up support for another independence referendum, which it has, but has it got them any closer to it? Well, we'll have to see on that one. But there's always that niggle in the back of my head whenever I hear Ian Blackford moaning about Boris Johnson's various travesties that he's helped with. You just think, your eyes are wide open. You gave Boris Johnson the power to carry out that agenda. He didn't have that power before you came along. Now, I don't know if strategically giving Boris Johnson his majority was worth it for the SNP on that occasion. Maybe it was. It's hard actually to tell without really comparing us with an alternative universe where it didn't happen. Because like I said, would that urgency for Scottish independence be as great if we'd stayed in the EU, which we would have done? If the Conservatives ultimately had been defeated, shown to be worthless, we'd have another general election, and then they didn't actually get that big majority, because what would they do with it? Brexit's already been done with. We've not left the EU. I don't know. It's really hard to say. But with this motion, all I can see is help in shoring up Johnson for no gain for the SNP. Like, before I saw gain. This time I don't. I mean, I don't know if it's related to that poll on Scottish independence that I talked about recently. Maybe this is just a reaction to that. Maybe the motion is intended to show people in Scotland, because that's all they care about, that Boris Johnson's position is secure. It's like, look, they're all backing him. Don't imagine that Boris Johnson's on his way out and the nightmare's going to end. Look, they're all supporting him. The only way to get rid of him is Scottish independence. Maybe that's the thinking. Maybe that. But that seems a bit silly, because I don't see a credible way that this does the SNP any favours. It certainly doesn't help Scotland. All it represents is easing the pressure on Johnson from the only source that actually matters to him. You know, this isn't opposition. This is throwing Johnson a lightning rod for Tory support. Because if they are doing it, because again, you'll be thinking to yourself, but Phil, go with the line of thinking. What if it is about, showing people in Scotland that the only way out is that? Because they're getting ready for the next referendum. No, they're not. No, they're not. At their last party conference, the SNP kicked the second referendum into the long grass. Oh, but they promised it'd be done when COVID's over. Does COVID look like it's over anytime soon? No. No. And the thing is, let us imagine that they even try and gear up for this second Scottish independence referendum in a year's time, let's say. And let's say, the courts say, yeah, you can issue the referendum. Let us say, right? That's another year down the line. In another year's down the line, if Boris Johnson, without this motion, Boris Johnson is already gone if the polls continue to do badly for him. If the opposition just keep heaping support on Tory MPs and the public are not very impressed with what they're doing, he'll already be gone in a year's time anyway. So this motion, whether it was put forward or not, will have had no bearing on what happens in a referendum in a year's time or 2 years' time. And it's realistically not going to be in a year's time because the SNP haven't even started legislating for it. So you're talking the year after at least. So that's not what this is for either. And that's the only thing that I thought to myself might be. And it can't even work for that. So it is just stupid. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button if you'd like to support the channel further. Please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.